first of all, I want to say good morning and welcome to day 3 of Breakfast with Champions. And thank you so much for tuning in today. And we hope you're enjoying your breakfast from Stone Oak if you chose that option. Yes, I am not Ben. He has been the host the past 2 days. My name is Aubrey. I am the Special Olympics and Healthy Lifestyles Coordinator with the ARC Fond du Lac. And I am going to be your hostess with the mostest this morning. So just a couple of friendly reminders. We are recording this for future use, but kind of what I said a little earlier, anyone who is watching on the other side, your face will not be shown, your voice will not be heard. So anything like that, we just want to use it for, so that way we can kind of learn and grow from this experience and use it for any possible PR stuff. We did ask you guys to submit questions, but if you do think of anything, the chat and the questions and the answers is open, and we definitely encourage any questions you might have for the champions. And so the only brain fart, sorry. So if you look on your screen, you have a couple choices. You can look at both of our champions and myself, or you can change your screen view it to view just the person that is speaking. I am not that Zoom techie, so I personally cannot tell you how to do that. But if you play with it, you have a very good shot of figuring it out. So that's enough about me and the housekeeping stuff. So let's get this party started by kind of talking a little bit about YPF. And I am going to share my screen so you guys can see this beautiful PowerPoint. So this Breakfast of Champions is presented by Young Professionals of Fond du Lac, which is an organization, which has been established in 2004 as a division of the Fond du Lac Area Association of Commerce, now known as Envision Greater Fond du Lac. YPF's mission is to engage and empower current and future leaders in the Fond du Lac area through professional development, networking, and social opportunities. And together, we will be agents of change, guiding our community forward as it evolves. Young Professionals of Fond du Lac has a lot of different events. So a couple of our annual events are the Future 5, which we will kind of talk about in a couple more slides, Young Professionals Week, and Breakfast with Champions. We also have a lot of good networking opportunities through like Member Monday, if you decide to become a member, and you can, like, we usually meet out in public or do like coffee and all that stuff, or we've been finding ways to do virtual as well in this time, and professional development. So that way we can encourage future leaders to grow within our community. We also have a lot of different committees. So we have our Program and Events Committee with the chair as Megan, the Marketing Committee with Taylor as the chair, and our Membership Committee with Jackie. And then we also have our Advisory Council with Jenna, and our Breakfast with Champions and YP Week Chair, Megan. And all of these are great committees to be a part of. And if you haven't already looked into wanting to get more involved, I highly suggest choosing one of these committees because they are phenomenal and it's great conversation and great peeps. So we do have some upcoming events that I wanted to touch base on as well. So one of them is Deck the Halls with Young Professionals of Fond du Lac, Trivia and Delight. And that is Monday, December 14th, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Coliseum. It is $5 for members and $10 for non-members. It is hosted, or it's kind of co-hosted with Laughable Productions. So you will definitely be decking the halls with your laughter. And then we also have the Future 5, which is still coming up, and we are just kind of twisting it and making it virtual, but also kind of adding some live aspects into that. So details will be coming out within the next month or so, probably after the holidays. And let's talk about these wonderful champions that I have with me. So first off, we have Heather. Heather is the Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer of Society Insurance. She has spent 20 plus years in the property casualty insurance business, and at Society Insurance, she is responsible for senior executive leadership of the change management, enterprise, data governance, finance, human resources, innovation, information technology, like all sorts of these divisions. So cool. That's fantastic. And she is also the executive sponsor of an enterprise-wide business transformation encompassing operational and technology solutions, which improve the customer experience and support strategic growth. Heather earned her MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and a BA in economics from the Colorado College. She lives in Neenah with her husband and son. They enjoy outdoor sports of biking, hiking, skiing, and they love to travel and explore. And next off, we have Mr. Aaron Sadoff, and he was born in 1971 in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Aaron is a United States Army and Gulf War veteran, a graduate of UW-Madison and Marian University, has dedicated 24 years in the field of education as a psychologist, history teacher, a middle school principal, and the past 12 years as superintendent of the school district in North Fond du Lac. Aaron has been honored as the 2019 Wisconsin Superintendent of the Year. Woot woot. Aaron's awesome family consists of his 3 children, Paige, Lily, and Ethan, his lovely wife of 25 years, Kelly. He's an avid believer and proponent of positive psychology and sees it as technology as education leader to create, maintain, and protect a healthy culture that produces young adults who are life, career, and college ready. 2 of his biggest out-of-school, non-family accomplishments is holding the Fond du Lac Buffalo Wild Wings Blazing Challenge for almost a year, eating 12 of the hottest wings in 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and caddying for the one, the only, President George H.W. Bush. So, oh, I pushed a weird button. I'm no longer share screening, am I? Okay, cool. So, enough about that. So let's get into some questions. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. I loved hearing about you. And I know we kind of touched base on your bios, but let's talk a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Heather, do you want to start?
Sure. So I can tell you a little bit about, I grew up in Iowa, so I'm very much a Midwestern person. Spent some time in St. Paul, Minnesota for about 10 years, and then I've been in Wisconsin for 20 plus. So at this point, feeling very much like a Wisconsin native and loving the area. And it's just been great. I've had some great opportunities working for a couple different companies, and I've been with Society Insurance now, coming up on 6.5 years, and just really enjoy the community, the opportunities. I've joined the Rotary. We meet on every Monday over the noon hour. So I've gotten to meet a lot of different leaders in the community. And so that's just a little bit more about me. Aaron, do you have I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Heather. And you know what? You didn't have a choice to be born in Iowa. Probably Minnesota was taken because there was opportunities. I'm just really grateful you're here, and welcome to Wisconsin. And sometimes we just luck out, don't we? Yeah. No, but it's great to meet Heather, and thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's amazing what's going on the south side of Fond du Lac with all the growth and going on. And once we get past COVID-19, we're going to see some pretty neat things happening around us. Not only from where we were, but I think with the Zoom and everything else, we're going to find a lot more ways to connect and make ourselves efficient, effective, and more together too. So as Aubrey said, and thank you very much, Aubrey, for helping to moderate. My name is Aaron Sadoff. Many of you out there, I probably have had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet before. Live in North Fond du Lac. I think Aubrey summed it up really well. My job, I've been in education as a teacher and a principal and administrator. And then, really more so than that, what my focus as I've grown older, I'm 40, I'll be 49 in a week or so, is that, it's really, life is kind of, I'm all about positive psychology, but there's a story Buddha said, and will just take about 2 minutes. And so Buddha, the philosopher for many had said, he has a story about 2 arrows. So you're walking through the woods, let's say, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, 1 arrow hits your leg. That hurts, right? And then you personally grab another arrow from the ground and stick yourself in the other leg. That hurts more, right? So what Buddha would say is that first arrow, that's pain. That's inevitable. And I think we've known that with COVID-19. We've known that with when we look at cancer. We know that when we look at hurt, when we look at difficult things in jobs, when we don't get jobs that we want, when we have different problems in our lives, things happen. Pain is real and it's going to be there. It's inevitable. And we can't deny that. And I think sometimes as you guys are going through as professionals, the reality of it is that bad things are going to happen all the time. That second arrow, that's a choice. And that second arrow is suffering. We can choose to suffer, or we can choose to deal with the first arrow in the right way. And one of the things is, as we go through today, and also I think as you reflect on meeting the other champions, or just in your own life with your parents or people you work with, it's really critical in these times for you to be young leaders and developing as professionals to figure out how to deal with that first arrow, because it's going to happen. Pain is inevitable, but remember, suffering's a choice, and lean on networks, lean on other people, because if you do that, you're going to find out that you're going to come out on top, but even more so than that, you're going to help others also come out and overcome that pain. So I'm really blessed to be part of this Breakfast of Champions, and thanks for inviting me. And I look forward to being with Heather and maybe giving some insight and helping you guys on your journey.
That was great. Thank you guys so much for that. So we'll start off with a question that was submitted when someone registered for this. What is one major professional positive that has come out of the shutdown and pandemic that we are going through? Aaron, do you want to start this time?
Yeah. So, you know how they say that that adversity develops character? You probably heard of that. I've got a different take on that. I think if you're under 18, I think adversity really helps develop character. I think once you get over 18, I think adversity reveals character. And what I have seen in 90% of the people that I get to serve and work with and communities, I've seen some amazing resiliency. I've seen people be able to do things they didn't think they could do. I've seen like our staff. We've gone through about 4 years of educational technology development in probably 3 months. Even though that things are so stressful, and it's not just like I'll just talk about the staff that I get to work with. They have to worry about coming to school or doing things virtual or dealing in different ways. They got their own families too. And our community, how they're resilient and be able to, deal with not having their kids in school all the time. So I think one of the biggest things that I see that's come out of this pandemic isn't anything tangible. I mean, we're going to use Zoom. We're going to do all these different things. We're probably going to have more sit-down meals, go outside. We're not going to be as busy as we were before. But to me, what's really come to fruition is that people are really starting to show that they can do it, that they can make it through. Because even though we're in a pandemic, it's not like we're storming Normandy. It's not like we've got Ebola coming all over the place. I mean, we're asking people to wear a mask, physically distance, be smart about where you're at. And the people we're starting to see it really come through in also an environment of political and personal turmoil where we got people wanting to separate us. So one of the greatest things that I've seen that's come out of this pandemic is how much people have been able to see in themselves the resiliency and the grit. And that's something that a lot of times is very difficult to do unless you have adversity. So this pandemic has given us that opportunity. And I would challenge all of you guys to maybe take a different lens to see how have you risen up to the occasion to deal with your family, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents. Some of you maybe had loss. How did you help support that? Because you probably didn't do that or didn't realize how much you are doing to really support that. So to me, the greatest thing that is coming out of this pandemic is ability to have people really see how they can rise to the challenge. And that's going to help us tenfold as we go forward to deal with problems that will be much bigger than COVID-19.
I would agree with what Aaron said, particularly about adversity and how people evolve and adjust to it. So when you think about moments of adversity, it's how do you treat others? It's how do you react? It's how do you respond to stress? It's so important. It's in what we've seen, like within my company, is we pivoted within a week where we took 95% of our employees and had them working remotely. And we were able to do that because, we had a great IT team who was ready, pulled everything together. We had plans in place in case we needed to do something like this in the future. So one of the things we found, though, is that connection with each other is so, so crucial. So having those and really being thoughtful and reaching out to people, you've got to do it in a different way now. One of the things we think a positive out of all of this is that, we probably had 30 to 40% of our employees working or telecommuting, working from home every once in a while. We think we're going to end up with the majority of our company having that kind of hybrid approach which is actually positive. When people need to work, get their stuff done, they're probably going to work at home. When they want to come to the office and collaborate and communicate and work with each other, there's ways to do that too. So we're actually thinking about our company and how we work together. And this is, I think, going to be a long-term transition in terms of how everybody works. But I would echo what Aaron said, is that it's how we work together. It's how we treat each other. It's that support that's so important. One of the really fascinating things is we do an employee engagement survey every year. Thought for sure that we might see those scores drop this year. You know what happened? They went up. And you had the same thing.
Yeah, we use the Q12. Just got it back. I was afraid to open it.
Yeah, but you know what's fascinating? It's because people are caring. They're very engaged. They're wanting to be there and support each other. And I think because of that and the communication, I think it's all coming down to communication too, and those touch points. So those are some of the positive things that are coming out of this.
Those are some very great points. I really love what you guys said about the adversity, resiliency, connection. Like, those are fantastic things to really like think about. And, you know, sometimes coming from that end of like just feeling like you never see the end of the tunnel, and being able to like hear from you guys, like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, Aubrey,
so
just
another question.
Really quick on that. I want to make sure that we're in the Midwest, and we have a lot of people right now, including, I'm sure, you two guys, that are very humble. And humility is a good thing, but this isn't the time to not give yourself credit for what you've done during the pandemic to get here. So please reflect on how you have risen to the occasion. I'm not talking about being arrogant. I'm not talking about being boastful, but this whole humility of like, well, I don't know, it's everybody else. You can say that, but it's you. So make sure that you understand that you reflect on how you've dealt with this, and then realize and see the things that you've done that have worked, and then replicate those. That's really, really important.
Can I love that.
Go for it, Heather.
And I'll give you a couple examples of some of our leaders in my company and some of the things they've done. And to your point, it's important to recognize them. We've had people who have set up special ways to stay connected. They've set up team chats. They write handwritten notes to their team. They reach out, they're calling them individually to check up on people, make sure people are okay, feeling that support. And this is being done by the leaders throughout the organization, whether they're folks who have direct reports or who are part of a team, and they're being there to support each other. So leaders throughout our company are finding those ways, and they're being really creative. And that's part of why things are going okay right now. So thanks to all of you guys who are doing that.
Yes, love it. Love that. So we're going to go with another question that was submitted. What motivates you to do what you do? I don't know if one of you wants to start it off, or.
Personally, I like to make a difference. And if I feel that that's occurring, that just gives me a lot of personal satisfaction. I love working with people. I like making a difference not only in the community of where I work, where I live, but with my friends and family, but also at work as well, and with the people. I like to mentor people, work with folks that way. Developing, watching people grow. I think the other big thing is, the other thing that motivates me is learning. And, you know, Aaron, as an educator, you probably love hearing that. I think good leaders learn every day, and they take the time, they make space in their life, in their work, to learn and have new experiences and have time to think and to have time to be creative. And for me, that's what motivates me is doing a lot of that and creating change and making a difference.
I'm going to echo much of what Heather said, with a little bit of a twist too. You know, that continual learning, like I said, I'm getting close to, you know, I'd say a third done with my life. So that means I've got 100 years to go. But when I think about what motivates me every day, that's something that continually changes in my life. And I think it's my relationships. You know, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a superintendent, I'm a community member, I'm a friend, I'm a brother. And, you know, without those things, I'm nobody. My relationships define who I am. And what motivates me is to continue to help support the people that are in my network so that I can be the best one of each one of those that I can be. One of the things that also motivates me is that I really think that one of the most nasty words is retirement. And I'll say that straight up. And the reason I think that is that there's a lot of mindsets that I'm going to work to X amount of age, save all this money, put off all these things. And then when I get there, then I'm going to enjoy my life. And in my thought process, this is my life. You know, this is, I mean, there's times I used to just go to school, but I can be on it to be fully transparent. July, August, September, I went to work. I mean, there was some heavy stuff going down and decisions being made. But what motivates me most is just to live that day and to help with those relationships and to Heather's point, to help make people better. You guys have chosen your path. You've chosen to be leaders. You've chosen to help people. And what you're also going to find is when you start to get those skill sets and you get those relationships, as much as I have anxiety and concern when I have to make difficult decisions or be in difficult situations, I think back to like in the military when, you know, that's a long, long time ago, but we practice for stuff all the time. It'd be like in life when you practice for a game, like a football or basketball game, and then you never play. And what happens is that right now, you know, probably 90% of what you're doing is practicing, but when these difficult situations come up, what really motivates me now is I love being part of that. Now, when I say love, I don't mean like, oh, I mean, I feel honored and responsible to make decisions and support more and more people as I've gotten the authority and the support to be in this position. And helping people, to just put a bookend of what Heather said, is really what motivates me. And by investing in others, I'll write this book down. It's called Big Potential by Sean Aker. Big Potential. Came out a few years ago. The value of your life, you have this much potential if you focus on you, but when you focus on others and their happiness and their engagement, your potential goes through the roof. And what does motivate me is that ability to invest and support others. And by the way, it's pretty selfish because you feel really good and then you end up probably making more money, having a better career. It's a secret. By investing and caring about others is one of the most selfish things you can do, but it's the thing that will make the best things happen. So that's what motivates me.
Those are some really great answers, and thank you so much for sharing those. So, excuse me. We just got a question from the chat. Can you name some action steps you have taken that have helped you be successful in your personal and professional life?
Good question.
I'm a work in progress. And I think that progress, not perfection. You know, I'm down like 8 pounds, pre-diabetic. I don't think you can be pre-diabetic. Either you are or you aren't. I've failed miserably in some of the decisions that I've made. I've been successful in other ones. I think my action plan is I continually reinvest like in myself, and I'm more and more into the data. I'm not a really big data person, but I sure like when people give me data to look at and they kind of help me say, hey, look at these things. Can you see this? Can you see that? And like Heather had said, we use the Q12. It's a Gallup poll to, you know, we could say that, is that what you guys use, Heather?
We use that concept, but then add a few more questions on. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So really what the action steps that I have is figure out what's going on in your life. Figure out what's going on in your life. And then my action plan is always to be very conscious and reflective of what did I do and did it work? And then you figure out what did you do, and then you can replicate that. Like for instance, really small, I write hey, have a great day, love, you know, me, Dad, when I leave the house, you know, and then every day, if I keep doing that as an action plan, I don't hear a whole bunch, things go well. If I don't do that, I'll get a call like, hey, is everything okay? You didn't leave a note, everything fine? So just in a small thing like that, you know, when you look at action steps or things, just me being very conscious of what I'm doing. And then when things work, replicate them. When they don't work, don't do that again. So I haven't really had a real, I'm starting to get more and more conscious about that and reaching out, and people. I have a couple of great friends who give me a lot of counsel. I think probably my biggest action plan is listening to others. But really it's just like continually evaluating what's going on and being very conscious of what I'm doing and then seeing those results. So that's something that I can grow on. I'm built, I figured out who I am. I always thought I want to be Wilfred Brimley and this like laid back grandpa kind of nothing bothers me type of leader. And boy, I got emotions. I'm a piece of work sometimes. But just being thoughtful, and my biggest action plan, I think, in life is that it's progress, not perfection. Be thoughtful of what you're doing and know that you can, as my friend Ted says, you're allowed to have bad moments. Just you're not allowed to have bad days. And just keep following that mantra.
To maybe add on to what Aaron shared is that very early on in my career, I had a mentor. He kind of took me under his wing, and it was actually very early on. It was in my late 20s, and he actually spent some time with me, asking me some of the questions about, where do you want to go? What do you want to be? Don't just let life happen to you. Be reflective, think through things. And so one of the things I did early in my career is spent some time thinking about what I value. And what's interesting is I wrote those down. And a lot of decisions I've made in my life where either I followed those values or I didn't. What's interesting? I was much happier when I was following my values. And when I went against those, I'll give you an example. I ended up making a career choice at one point, thinking, oh, this is exactly what I need to do next in my career. This is where I need to go. But I had some doubts. There was some red flags. And with hindsight, after I got into the role and into this opportunity, it's like, you know what, my values don't align with this company's values. And I wasn't very happy. And other people in my life weren't happy then. And so it came to the point where it takes time to be reflective. And so the question about having an action plan, I think, is thinking through, be very purposeful, thinking through about what's important to you, where you want to spend your time, what kind of environment you want to be in, what do you want to be known for, and who do you want to be involved with. And so from there, I was able to make some really good career choices, made some changes, and I'm certainly on a really good path with a great company that's very much aligned with who I am and what I believe in. And so that's the other thing I would suggest to folks is to spend that time thinking through what's important. And then the last couple pieces for me personally is I always try to be in the moment. Particularly in today's world where there's this blending of work and home, and you can see I'm at home right now doing this video call, having and thinking through how to be in the moment for each part of your life, whether it's work, whether it's family time, that's really important. And setting down the phones and putting those aside. We have something where when we come into our house, we put them aside. Because we want to be in the moment with each other. And so that's just a recent example or of an action where we're trying to make a difference in how we interact with each other.
That's great. Yeah. You both made very good points. What really stood out to me was, Aaron, when you said progress, not perfection, because that's like something that I can't speak for everyone on the call, but I know for me, that's something that sometimes I lose sight in because you just get like this like high expectation and all that. And then Heather, I really loved what you said about like what you want to be known for. Those are great things to take away. And for all of you listening, if you want to share something you take away from any of these answers, we'd love to like share them in this webinar as well. So moving on to the next question. This one was submitted when the person registered. Who is or who was a professional role model for you in your career?
I have many, but I think I'm gonna unpack it back to 1998. If we can go back to, we're worrying about the world's gonna end and everybody's hoarding stuff, and we'll go back to, most of you out there were probably 10, maybe 15. So we'll go back then. And 1998 was my second year of teaching at Manitowoc Lincoln High School, and I lived in Sheboygan, so it was about a 40-minute drive. And I taught high school psychology, and I was a really good teacher, great teacher. And if you didn't believe me, you could just ask me, and I would tell you. I was that kind of a mindset. So Jim McCartney, who was a principal at Manitowoc Lincoln High School, I got a job interview and an offer from it was a feeder school to Sheboygan North, which was like 2 blocks from my house. So I went in by Mr. McCartney. Jim McCartney, and I said, hey, you know, I got this job offer. It's like, it's right by my house, you know, but I've done so many great things here. I don't want to leave Manitowoc in a lurch, and everything's great. And he let me go on, and he just sat there and listened. And then when I was done, he looked at me, he goes, Aaron, you're not that important. And I was taken back. He goes, I'm not either. This place has been here long before you got here. It'll be here long after. What you need to do is what's best for you and your family, and leave this place better and set the next person up for success. Other than that, you're not that important. Get over it. And when he told me that, I've used that story with probably about 40 people that have come to me that got job offers or they live in Neenah and want to get a job there, but they don't want to leave North Fond du Lac. You know, that when you talk about a mentor and somebody who has really planted a seed, when I figured out I wasn't that important, I started to really make a difference, because I was important to other people. It wasn't how important I was. It was how important I was to other people. And just to kind of reflect back on that last question with this one here, what Mr. McCartney helped me learn is never paint yourself in a corner. Quit using absolutes. Like, I don't have to be the superintendent of North Fond du Lac forever. If Aaron Sadoff wasn't the superintendent of North Fond du Lac, this place wouldn't blow up. Somebody would come here and do something. And maybe it's even going to be better. And how could I do that support? So in your life, I went through some times, and even though Ms. McCartney helped point that out, he really helped me realize that I'm not that important, and people don't care. We all think all these people care. And I mean this all in the best way possible, because people care about you, but they got so many other things going on. I highly doubt many people are talking, like none of you probably talked about me yesterday, except for maybe Heather and Bree and Aubrey, because they knew we were going to come on. But none of you thought, how's Aaron doing? What's Aaron think of me? And I think what Mr. McCartney as a mentor did to me is help me realize my insignificance really helped me then to make an impact, because I quit worrying about how important I was, and I worried more and more about the difference that I could make. So I actually wrote him a letter. I found his address online and stuff, and I wrote him a note, sent him a note. He's down. I don't want to know how you figured this out, but thanks so much for sending me the note. So we've been in little contact. So Jim McCartney helped me realize that the perspective, it's not me, it's about others.
So I've like Aaron, I've had a lot of different folks influence my life, and whether they're, obviously like parents when you're growing up, and coaches in high school and college, and they make a difference too. When I step back and think, I mentioned a little bit earlier, the one mentor who kind of pulled me aside very early in my career, who asked some really good questions and helped support me. I would say more recently, probably in the last couple roles that I've had, I've actually had some outside contacts who've really been able to share with me their thoughts. They actually provide good feedback. They provide me with no holds barred. I mean, they're pretty like, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to think about. Here's how you maybe need to evolve and change and grow. There's things that we can always do differently and better, and things that we haven't thought of. And when I'm finding later in my career, having those, so I have a mix of folks that I work with and talk to at different times. And I think having that network is really important. So no matter where you are in your career, I think having a group of individuals who will be very honest with you and in a nice, I mean, they'll share you what's going on and their insights. I think that's really important, because you don't always get that at work. You don't always get that from your boss. You don't always, I mean, people will give you some feedback, but it's not very unvarnished. And sometimes you just need to hear some of that, and then you have to listen. I think one of the key things that I've learned in my career is to step back and listen a lot and seek to understand where other people are coming from and their viewpoints, because that also helps provide additional context. So those were just a few things that I've taken away from the mentorships that I've had.
Somebody just knocked on my window. No, somebody just knocked on my window, so I waved.
I love that. Those are some really good answers. Aaron, my heart, before you, like, when you just said that, like, you're not important, my heart kind of like dropped a little bit. I'm like, where's the story going? But it really came across like, and that's a really good takeaway. And I really love to, like, Heather, like, like just stepping back and like listening, like, and doing all that. All of those were great, like, great answers. So another question moving forward. What was a turning point in your career?
Well, a turning point for me was I had a couple different spots where I transitioned. I've been in a couple different industries. I've worked 2 different industries, 5 different companies, and so I've had some opportunities to have those pivot points. I think the first one is when I actually switched industries, and that was a big move. I didn't know it at the time, but it certainly is got me to where I am today. I moved from municipal finance over into insurance, and very, very different worlds. So that was a pretty significant pivot point for me. There was a lot of learning that had to happen going from a consultant type role. That's what I was doing. I was out working with cities and school districts, did school district bond referendums, things like that. So, oh yeah, those are nice big ones and actually a lot of fun to work with communities. So going from that kind of type of consulting type of role into a corporate setting is very different, and it takes some time and effort. So that was a big transition point for me. I think the other one was I decided to go back to school, and while I had a family as well, and that was a big commitment, but that was something I wanted to invest in myself. I love to learn, and I was at a point in my career where I was like, I want to take this time, make this investment, and go back to school. And so that's what I did. I went back and got my MBA, and it was part of my growth that I wanted to focus on. So those are the 2 pivot points for me.
I would say probably the turning points in my life is this was now, we'll go back to about 03 through 06. And I was a teacher at a high school, and I got my administrative degree, and my goal in life was being assistant principal. That's what I wanted to do. You know, if somebody said, Aaron, I want to be a second baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers or an assistant principal, those are the 2 things. Go figure, right? And teaching was a way to get there. I love teaching too, but my passion was always going to be to deal with kids that had issues and stuff, you know, and parents, and just help organize. So I, as a teacher, I applied for assistant principal jobs and principal jobs, and I got nothing. I had probably 10 interviews, got turned down. Now, I had gotten every job that I've ever interviewed for, you know, all the way through my life. I made it through a war. I got, you know, into colleges. Everything fell into place for Aaron, you know, and I'm sure there was something that I did to help that happen. But everything was going well. And at this time, I didn't get a job. Matter of fact, at some place, I got turned down 4 times at some times, you know, and interviewed. And one time I was told, you know, Aaron, you know, the reality of it is people think you're kind of a joke. You're just like a horse and pony show, and, you know, you're just, you know, you're kind of Pollyannish, you know, because I'm a positive person. But what I realized at that time, as tears were rolling in my eyes, is I'm like, I'm all done. I'm going to be a teacher. That's all I'm ever going to be. What I realized is that my positivity, there's a dark side to it. Because if I don't let people know that I work hard, that I can make tough decisions, because I did them all the time. I hate whining, but I got to let people know that I'm struggle sometimes too, so they can see who I am. So not getting those jobs, being told things that I didn't believe about myself, and I still see them differently. But if I wasn't told that, I wouldn't have realized how purposeful I have to be and how I interact with people. And that means that, like, go back to that Buddha story at the beginning, which I just learned about that story. It was written thousands of years ago, but I came across that in February. You know, I always dealt with that first arrow pretty darn well. But I realized that if you're going to lead and you're going to be part of a group, being vulnerable, when I mean vulnerable, I know that's kind of a buzzword now, like empathy. So, but you got to let people in authentically to what's going on with you. Otherwise, they're not going to see that. They're not going to see it. So my turning point was when things didn't work out for me, you know, and my wife was like, hey, forget them. She said different words, and we were cheering, you know, we're going to make it. And so I became a superintendent, which I never, ever my whole life thought I would do. be a superintendent for 12 years, longest job I've ever had. I got my resume ready in case I have to leave town quick, but I should be good. I'm hoping, right? But the biggest turning point for me is when I didn't get something over and over and over. And from that, I had to learn, you don't have to change who you are or your outlook, but what's getting in your way is you. You take that responsibility. And now I've been very purposeful about sharing with people when I struggle, about not being sugary and over the top that people, oh, look at there's Aaron, he's always happy. Because I'm not. But it's okay to share that in the appropriate way. So that was my turning point, was realizing that I have to be more honest with people. And when you don't get what you want, there's that country song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers, because I wouldn't be here right now if I got everything I wanted.
I love that. I'm writing down notes and you guys are writing or saying some amazing things. And I love
Hey, Aubrey,
that.
can I just say, by the way, your moderation's really good. Because one of the things you do after each question, you say, well, you know, Heather, I really liked what you said there. And then you said, you know, Aaron, I like that too. So just so you know, you're doing a wonderful job moderating.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, because I think I stressed out like all week for this, because I'm like, I'm good at public speaking and I'm good at doing stuff, but I also like to be prepared. And when I feel like I'm not prepared, I'm always like, ah. So
But
I
remember,
appreciate.
Stress doesn't kill, it's your perception of it. You needed to stress. And your stress worked. So well done.
Go. But I love the answers to those questions, because I feel like there's stuff that like myself has gone through, and I'm sure like people listening have. Like, I mean, I too, Heather, am kind of going through this turning point of like, I kind of want to go back to school, but I also like, is it the right time? Especially like, 2020, like probably like, and so kind of hearing that, and then like, not everyone, and Aaron getting turned down, sometimes we need that. We need to do that, and then we need to move back up. So another question that we have that was submitted when someone signed up was, we'll do this one. This one's good. Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to move up but is feeling stuck in their current position? I feel like throughout like answers, I feel like you probably have answered this, but I think it's also like.
Sure. So is it okay if I just jump in real quick? So some of the things that that I would recommend is, first of all, understanding where you want to move and why, in terms of the role. And I would probably multiple steps here, so reflect on where you want to go and why. What do you think you need to do to be successful in that role? Probably talk either to your leader or others in your area or company. And if you don't have someone to talk to in your company, there's probably some other folks that you can reach out to talk about next steps in different opportunities. One of the things I'm finding is, and I found in my career, is that sometimes it's hard to understand what you need to do to go from, let's say, this level. I'm just going to say from a individual contributor to maybe a manager or a supervisor, and what skill sets do you need? And so maybe you need to take some classes. There's amazing amount of resources like on LinkedIn Learning. There's things that you can do to ready yourself and get some of that skill set. I would also say, depending on what type of a role change you're looking for, there's also an opportunity to see if you can get a mentor in the organization to help you and to kind of pave the way a little bit. Sometimes people just don't know you have an interest. So sharing, hey, I have an interest in doing this. At my company, we talk about, we have diamonds in the rough in our company. We don't know that people want to do stuff, and we need to pull that out and understand that. So those are some of the steps I would take.
I think what Heather just said, it resonated with me too. And, it's something that I just thought about some of our educators and instructional aides. Sometimes we don't realize what people want because they're afraid to tell us, or we're just not listening. So, that's sometimes letting people know that answers is a huge thing. That's a great point. One thing I would also say is Daniel Pink. He's big. If you another book, Drive by Daniel Pink. It's an older book, but great research about motivation. And then along with that, there's this graphic novel called Johnny Bunko. I use this if you're looking for a graduation gift for people. You know, it's probably like $12. You want it something personalized. I've been getting this for a lot of students that are graduating. It's called Johnny Bunko, and there's like 6 different things, guides to the last, you know, career guide you'll ever need to read. It's pretty good. And one of them is that there's no plan. You know, we have these plans, and sometimes if you want to move up, sometimes if you think this is where, sometimes we get enamored and we make ourselves want what we want. For instance, during the pandemic, the Sadoff family did a 20,000 pound patio. You know, I had my 3 kids home. We used their backs, right? So we got that. We went to Menards, got these chairs. We're going to get these inexpensive chairs, but then we got these wrought iron chairs, and my daughter Lily and I are walking out, and we're carrying these chairs. And I said to my daughter Lily, I said, "Isn't it great, boy? It's really great that we up these chairs. This is like awesome." She stopped. She looked at me. She says, "Dad, do you always talk yourself into agreeing with the decisions that you've made?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I do. Great chairs, huh? Great chairs." And what I mean by that is, you want to move up just because you're working at company A. We tend to want to think that's heaven. We tend to want to think that, you know, this is where we need to be. Guys, sometimes taking that step and that move, always financially, always, you know, like with insurance, you always want to make sure that you can make sure that you can maintain and provide for yourselves and for your families and whoever relies on you. But other than that, you would be surprised that when you get out of the city, there's country. You would be so surprised that there's so many other places than where you're at. And sometimes we talk ourselves into that there can't be anything else, or this is where I have to be. So I would say another thing too is that as you're going through, if you feel that you're stuck, I think what Heather said is outstanding, because, you know, that I'd go that route if you really love where you're at, and that's awesome. But maybe sometimes there is a chance to take that leap. And the cool thing is that, like Heather had said earlier, if you make a change because you think you really think that's the right route and it isn't, then you can change again. Mm-hmm. That's okay. So I would say just be very aware of how you're biasing yourself to where you have to be. And these irrational thoughts that go through our heads about absolutes, really check those, because you have this activating event, you have this thought, this behavior, whatever, then you have your consequence. And sometimes what we think about where we need to be, really those consequences make us less and ground us more than going. So I would say just really think about, if ever all else fails and you're trying to do that, maybe there's another place. Bill Belichick, terrible coach when he was at Cleveland. Look what he's done at New England. Nick Saban won the multiple national championships at Alabama. Terrible NFL coach. So sometimes it's just a different environment. You can then really go forward.
Those are great. I definitely wrote down way too many notes with that. But yeah, being the diamond in the rough and, you know, realizing, you know, maybe, yes, the organization someone currently is in is great, but reminding themselves, like, there's so much more outside of the city. Like I said, I can only relate to myself right now, and I know I felt that way before. So it's really nice to be able to hear, like, champions such as yourself kind of reaffirm, like, it's okay to feel that way. So here's a good question that was brought up. So I was kind of doing a little, like, research as well. So Erin, you're in charge of, like, a whole school district pretty much. And Heather, you are executive leadership for all of these different divisions. So how do you find the work-life balance, or, like, the work-life intertwined, as some would say too? Like, how do you work on that?
I'm not the right person to ask that, but here's what I'll tell you. I think for me, I'll go back to that whole retirement conversation perspective. My great friend Jim Siebert, who's now the superintendent down in Waukesha, he was also a good mentor. I was a principal when he was superintendent in North Fond du Lac. And he told me, as I was looking to get into the superintendency, he goes, "Hey, Aaron, you know, from when you went from being an educator to being an administrator, you had a career change." I'm like, yeah, that made a lot of sense, because now kids aren't the problem, it's the adults. And I'm not saying they're all problems, but you deal with different things. He said, but here's the difference. When you're going from administration to superintendency, you now have a lifestyle. So for me, the way I do this work-life balance is I don't What I do is I embrace my life as a lifestyle. So as a superintendent, I'm always on. Now I had 3 kids who went through North Fond du Lac. I went to their games. I was on as a superintendent, but I was there as a dad too. When I'm home and I'm looking at emails or I'm doing different things, I don't have to do it in isolation. I'm there with my kids. One thing that really worked for us is that we ended up getting a hot tub on the pandemic patio. And I've talked to my son more than ever before, creating these times too, where you got to talk. I think what Heather said is the phones go away because you got to talk is really good. So I'd say for my work-life balance, I think what I have done is I've embraced my life as a lifestyle, which means though is that you're conscious of what that does to others that you've chosen to be in your life, your wife, your husband, your spouse, your kids. So you have that to me is find out what your lifestyle is. And if you can have a lifestyle that includes your job and your life, you don't have to worry about balance because you're just that. So that's what my perspective is. Instead of saying, well, I've got to be off, I've got to do mental care here. I'm always doing that. That's something I've evolved to. So, and I know my answer is probably a little different than most, and which, we all have to find our way. But as you go on, for me, my work-life balance is just having a lifestyle and being okay with that. And to your point too, Aubrey, about how you were stressing about getting ready for today. Kelly McGonigal, another one, great stuff. Write her name down. She's awesome. She's got stuff out on YouTube. Got Dr. Kelly McGonigal. She's done research. Stress doesn't kill your perception of it. And if you see your job as a calling, things don't really badly stress you out. And then it's also remember the choices you made, because when you decide to be a spouse or you decide to be a parent, that's a responsibility that you have to work into that. So those are the 3 things. Find a lifestyle that has a calling where you can mesh them together. The second part is make sure you're taking care of your relationships, because if you take care of your relationships, you're taking care of you. And number 3, just create that time where you have to engage, where you're forced to with other people in a way that maybe isn't all about work. And that's how I do it.
I would have to echo Aaron. I totally think it is a lifestyle. You can't compartmentalize it, just at a certain level, depending on the role. I'm certainly at that stage where everything kind of comes together. And I think it's also okay to say no. It's okay to say no to things. And you have to think about what's important, where you want to spend your time. Back to that people relationship side, tending to the relationships is where I try to spend a lot of time. And I actually know I need to spend more time on it. I can always spend more. But making sure I'm carving out the time and getting to family events. And my son's a swimmer, and he's got some meets coming up, and now they're virtual, but I still want to watch them and I still want to be there. And I need to get them to different practices and things like that. And at the end of the day, that's part of my life. I figure out how to blend it all in and do not only that, but get and do work, and then also do community things too. So at the end of the day, it's not a balance anymore. I don't view it as it tips. I view it as, I think, Aaron, you were saying it's all kind of together, and I would totally agree with that. And it's just putting some boundaries around what's important and making that happen.
Heather, I think you said something really good, and I took away when you said if you're an individual contributor or a manager, I think many of you that are watching this today, you want to move away from individual contributor. That's as a young professional, you're trying to say, how can I impact people's lives? How can I be in a management and leadership position? And as you do that, because like if I'm a teacher or even as a principal, yeah, I mean, if that's what career I've chosen, you need to shut that down and do something else. You got to have that division. But when you choose to evolve yourself into more of a leadership role, then that changes quite a bit. And if you worry about yourself and isolating yourself, you're going to I don't think you can do the job so well. But that doesn't mean you have to give all of you to everybody all the time either. It's that balance, as Heather had said, and taking care of those relationships. And by the way, when you work on culture, engagement, and relationships, you're very inefficient as a manager. I mean, getting like the numbers done, the tasks done, you're going to find the more that you work on relationships, the farther you get behind on the tasks that you have to do. But that's okay, because it'll pay off tenfold as you go forward, as Heather said.
Those are great takeaways. I really like embracing your life as your job. Like, that's one thing that I've definitely taken away. Like, I've heard many champions kind of say the same thing, and it's just great. Like, it's great to hear. And then reminding ourselves too, like, it's okay to say no. Like, it's okay to be like, you know what? Like, I can't. Because sometimes.
One thing I'll say really quick too is, so do you remember, and some people think are getting, where are you going with this here? Is this politically correct? In the 30s, there were 7 very short people, okay? And then this lady came by with dark hair and found them. And she found them in a mine. And when they were in the mine, they were working. Do you know what they were doing while they were working? Anybody?
Well, what were they doing, Aaron?
They were whistling.
Whistling.
Oh.
Yep.
It's the 7 Dwarfs. And when you look at if you whistle, if you see your life as a calling, if you have fun at work, if you have fun at what you do, you don't need to recharge your batteries, because when you get home, you're going to be charged to be there. So, let's learn from the 7 Dwarfs, for crying out loud. That was back in the 30s. Why can't we, if we have fun and whistle and get things done at work, you go home and you're recharged. You don't have to recharge your batteries because you're ready to go. And as a leader, you can control that.
It really took me a second to feel like where you were going on that. I was just like trying to think of like, what is,
you
like,
can't say short people. That's not correct. They were animated. I have the freedom to say that now.
No, I was more thinking of like, what did I miss in history class? Like, why can't I remember this? I feel like, and then you were like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, cool. So another question that was put in the chat was, how do you motivate your employees?
Really quick, Daniel Pink, Drive. One thing is people need to get paid money. When you look at low cognitive work, like widgets, like making something or turning over, like how many things you do, like if you make 7 of these, you get paid X. If you make 12 of these, you get paid X. That works. When you get to more difficult cognitive or slightly more difficult cognitive things, the research shows that there's 3 things that motivate people. If you can create autonomy, where people feel that they have the ability to do what they need to do. Mastery, where you put people in positions where they feel they're good at and they get to use their skills every day. If you do those 2 things, things can, they'll go off the thing. And then the final one is purpose. When they know that, it's like when Henry Ford, the one downside about having this, what the assembly line is if I put tires on and then Aubrey, you did the steering wheel, and then Heather, you did the upholstery, we didn't know what everybody else did. But when you know what everybody's doing, you see that final product and you know what your vision or your goal of your company is, that's called purpose. So mastery, autonomy, and purpose. If you can create an environment. Now, number 1, like my grandpa Wimberger said, whiskey or love don't buy whiskey, you need some money. Okay. So you got to pay people right. That's a big part of motivation. If you don't, the other stuff doesn't matter. But after that, paying them more is not going to get you a lot more bang for your buck, but mastery, autonomy, and purpose does. Those 3 things, if you can create within your business, your building, even your family, even in a relationship with a spouse, it motivates people to want to do stuff.
And to add on to that, I think there's maybe a couple other things too, which would include feeling like you're part of something bigger and better, not better, bigger, and making a difference, kind of that purpose, but feeling like you have a place. And I do think that in today's world, there's a lot to be said about that. So being heard, feeling like you're being heard, feeling like you're making a difference in the organization, having some say, and then understanding how what everybody's doing is influencing, helping the end customer, the consumer. And so it's all kind of comes together, but you have to have, I think that belonging is something that really motivates. One of the things we're seeing, particularly as through this, through COVID and everybody working remotely, if you don't feel like you're part of a team, if you don't feel like you're part of the broader organization, it feels lonely. And when you're lonely and feeling like you're not part of something, it's harder to have that motivation so there's a lot of effort that we're doing to make sure that connectedness occurs. And actually, Aaron, you talked about the 12 questions for that survey. Those are some of those items that are on there.
Yep. Like number 10.
Yeah.
I have a best friend at work.
Yes.
I mean, Gallup took that out and people say, who cares if you have a best friend at work? But to Heather's point, if you have people that think they have a best friend at work, that means they feel belonging and they're part of something. So yeah, definitely. That's huge.
Yeah.
Great point.
Great takeaways, really good. The recognize, understanding, belonging, all things that I think really
Can I
matter.
add one thing? Can I add one thing? It's
Go
not
for it.
about tasks. It's not about the doing. It's not, you don't motivate by saying, here, do these 10 things today. So it's really more about how you make people feel and pulling everybody together.
Amen.
I have to write that down. Hold on.
Can I get a hallelujah?
I really would. I know like sometimes this feature has like a like clap thing, but I know like I wish they had like one of those like raise the roof buttons too. Cool. So another good question that was brought up when people were signing up, and Heather, I remember you kind of touching base on this, so you can elaborate more. Aaron, I can't remember if you mentioned anything. So who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship? It can be a person, a podcast, a group. The sky's the limit.
Well, and this is probably other people this is listen to, but I like a couple different podcasts. I like to listen to some of Brene Brown. I think there's some really inspirational things there. Also, Simon Sinek has some really good stuff. And it's all about, it's about the why, right? It's about how people come together in companies. So I like some of those podcasts, some of those authors. Personally, just for an individual connection point for who I look up to, I would say there's a number of folks. I have a former board member who I'm work with and have worked with in the past, and we've stayed connected, and he's been pretty inspirational in my life. He actually founded a company, and it's pretty interesting to see and learn about the challenges that he went through, and he's been just very open with his time, and appreciate that. And so that's the other person that I kind of have been working with recently.
Yeah, both, Simon Sinek and Brene Brown, outstanding. I'm a big Sean Aker person with Happiness Advantage and Big Potential. Daniel Pink, he's got some really good podcasts. One, I think it's called 1-3-20, one book, 3 questions in 20 minutes with an author. That hasn't been back on in a couple of years, but you can still find that. There's some good stuff there. I think just, going through and being open. One thing I'm sure you've probably heard of a lot of leadership books and theories and stuff. And the thing about those is they're all right. Every one of them. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there and there's so many that are good, So, just go in there, and when you like one, one of the most disturbing things about the internet and Google is it knows like what you want based on what you've looked at. One of the best things about the internet or Google is it kind of knows what you want because of what you've looked at. So I would say when you start listening to some podcasts, there'll be some suggestions, and it's a rabbit hole. It's really cool. So those are some things for me. And then what I'd also suggest is get out of just like I don't listen to just education stuff or just leadership stuff. Now this is going to be way off base, but there's a Ron Burgundy podcast out there. If you want to just shut down, from Ron Burgundy, from Anchorman, he's actually, Will Ferrell does a podcast as him, and he has this producer, Carolina, and it's totally not appropriate all the time as far as politically correct, but it is hilarious. And, if I'm going somewhere for 30 minutes, I pop in my Ron Burgundy podcast, you just leave laughing, and it's just fun. So also find those. There's other great things in podcasts like Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe's an amazing guy. Dirty Jobs. He also has some giving back on Facebook, some amazing stuff. But he has this thing, How I Heard It, which is almost like the Paul Harvey of our day, which most you don't even know. 10, 15 minutes where he goes in the story, and then at the end you're like, oh, that's so cool. I learned about history, or I learned about something. So I would say that when you go out there and look at those things, find some stuff outside too of whatever your job is to kind of give you some inspiration and humor, because you can bring that back in too and have fun and make those connections. As far as people go, I got my superintendent. One thing that is really, really difficult about now for me as a superintendent is we'd have 3 or 4 times a year that we would get together with other superintendents in person. I mean, we're talking now in around the Fond du Lac County, private and public, all those, we get together, Zooming and talking and working. It's been awesome. But just your colleagues that are other places, because the more that you get into more specialized roles, like for Heather, there's nobody like Heather at Heather's company. So how does Heather then learn about what other people like Heather do? You know, there's only one Aaron in North Fond du Lac. So how does Aaron know what's right or wrong because I'm isolated here? So wherever you're at, find colleagues and cohorts that are similar to you in different businesses, and they can give you such tremendous insight. And they are such a great place where you could feel like I can talk freely to you and you're not going to judge and you're going to understand, because our spouses don't even do that, or our kids, because they can't. So for me, it's those mentors. And when you get new ones that come into the field and people retire, just always keep reaching out and networking.
You raised a really good point, is finding that group of folks who are maybe outside of your company or the industry. There's a group, I'm not doing an advertisement, but there's a group in Wisconsin called Executive Agenda. So depending on where you are in your career, it's usually kind of when you're at that director level and maybe higher, they have these peer groups that get together, and they're cross industry, cross functions, and you just learn a lot. So that's out there for those who are at that point in their career where they might find some value in it.
Executive Agenda?
Executive Agenda. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thanks.
Taking notes. I mean, there's also a group, Young Professionals of Fond du Lac. That's also like a great way to,
Oh, you forgot
to get out in the community. That one can be paid at.
Hey, Heather, I think there's a group, the Young Professionals in Fond du Lac County, that's very similar to what we're talking about. Would you concur, Heather?
I agree.
Sorry, I had to take advantage of that like opportunity like that. Those are some great people though that you've said, and I really loved how the idea of like you shouldn't just stop like having that like little rabbit hole of like the educational podcast or like the financial or whatever kind of thing that you're into, and like get out and about. Like I can probably name a couple podcasts that I won't say right now that I listen to, because sometimes you just need something too to just kind of shut your brain off.
Mm-hmm.
So another question that was submitted when someone signed up was, how has your view of what it means to be a leader changed over time? If so, if it changed, what impacted that change?
I'm going to go back. Oh, go ahead, Heather.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to the 70s and 80s. There's the leader of Great Britain. Her name was Margaret Thatcher. They called her the Iron Lady. Worked with Ronald Reagan. And I think her, along with Ronald Reagan, led to the demise of communism, to tearing down the wall. She was huge there. And she had a comment one time that just resonates with me, a quote that says, being in power is like being a lady. If you have to tell someone you are, you're not. And I really don't think, and my perspective, how I work is, I always thought about myself, well, I'm a leader. And what I've changed is I think of myself as a server. So when you think about servant leadership, and people, there's a lot of connotations to, religion and Jesus, but really, I mean, if you think about it, what Jesus Christ did and how he led, and I'm not a religious person, but you just think about that story and what he did in order to help people and why people followed him. And you look at Gallup, and after, there's something called strength-based leadership after you do the Strength Finder. And what Gallup says is to develop authority. And the power is where you control assets and you have people do stuff, and then they do stuff and they get it. But if you're not in power anymore, then people don't care. It's as long as you hold something they have. Authority is where people say, hey, I'll let this person make decisions and leave me. So what's really for me is I've really learned, and this has been an evolution. I can't say at this time this happened, but I think just from like reading and learning, you know, being through the Gallup, learning about servant leadership, learning about positive psychology, being successful, struggle, having failures, being in life, is that I've learned that leaders, I can't say I'm a leader. You can say I'm a leader. You know, because I mean, I can't, if I have to tell you I'm a leader, if I have to tell you I'm in charge, what's that say? So hope, stability, trust, and compassion. Those four. That's what Gallup, that strength-based leadership. So every day when Aaron Sadoff comes to school, goes with the family, whatever I do, hope, or stability, compassion. Those are the things. Gosh, I'm freaking out. But those are the four things. So hope, stability, compassion, and trust. Sorry, I got to have trust. That's the biggest one. Are the things. And if I do that well, then people say I have authority. And that's worked for me. That's why I think, the reason I think that I'm an effective leader is because other people allow me to be their leader.
Good points. So for me, as part of my leadership journey, it's a little bit, it's kind of similar from the standpoint of it's about listening. It's about communicating. What I find is when there's challenges in an organization, or there's issues that need to get, or problems that need to get resolved, or changes that have to occur, a lot of it comes back to communication. So as a leader, I think one of the key things I've learned on my journey is the importance of that. And the importance of not only in the community, it's two-way, right? It's the listening, a lot of listening, more listening than talking. And then when there is that communication multiple times to multiple folks, multiple stakeholders, you can't over communicate. And I think that's actually something that's become very clear as we've all gone to this remote working type of approach. It's just reinforced that those connections and those relationships and that communication needs to be right at the top, as a leader.
And I would say, you know, building off of what Heather said about communication support, right now, not every, you know, like if I think about people in this community and our staff, I don't think there's a lot of people who are happy with Aaron Sadoff and the decisions I'm making with blended, kids in school, all that. But I don't really think there's a lot of people that are really ticked off at me. I think there's people that disagree, but I think that's because of the stability and compassion. Because of the time that's gone in with relationships and all that, people know I care, even if I don't do what they want to do. They know I care. So that helps out a lot. And then the other thing in this crazy time, our school district and my thought process, working with our board, our leadership team, and our community, is we want to be proactive. We have plans of what's going to happen. We have reasons for why we're going to do what we're going to do. That's that stability part. So as you go forward, if I believe, if you want to be recognized and a leader of these difficult times like that, if you care and you can create stability, you're going to go a long way, because then that allows you to foster hope. And then hope means things can get better, and then you plan to get there. So yeah, that's, as you guys continue to grow, I am so much smarter now than I ever was. And Socrates once said, you know, I realize I'm one of the smartest people in the world because I realize I know little. When I got over myself and just started to think about how and what I'm doing and how I can help people, I've really started to grow. So that's another thing I'd say, you know, really, you know, as a leader, get over you, because it's not about you, it's about them.
Great takeaways. I think you guys like hit the nail on the head right there. Like, those are great takeaways. Get it.
Mic drop it out.
I was going to say, I don't have a mic right now. It's on my computer. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure my team leader would not be happy if I decided to mic drop my computer right now.
It's only a thing.
So another great question that was put in is, what have you learned working in your current position that you didn't learn in school?
Like everything we've talked about today.
Don't. And I don't mean to drop. I'm trying to give you some names because I don't make a lot up. I think I have made some things up. And I'll leave it with a quote that I think I've made up. I think it's very powerful, but I'm not sure if I did. But Admiral Stockdale, he was Ross Perot's vice president candidate. He was a prisoner of war for 8 years during the Vietnam War, the highest ever ranked prisoner of war. And he talked about wisdom. And he says wisdom is when talent meets experience. That's wisdom. When you have talent and no experience, you have potential. When you have experience with no talent, you're pretty much a waste. So if you ask, like, what have I learned in this position? And is that idea of what wisdom truly is? Because I might know in a book and I might understand things, but until I see how they work and I have the experience of doing them, I can't really make that connection. So, as a person, there's a lot of you guys out there that have a ton of potential, but you haven't had the experience to understand how that potential can grow. And that's not your fault. And experience doesn't take 20 years. In 1 year, you can have all this and develop wisdom, I think. And then there's other of you that have had all this time, but maybe you're not where you want to do. And that might be the talent part. But just because you don't think it, that's why you go and you learn, you get mentors, you build your base. So I think that what I would say, what I've learned more and more in this job is about progress, not perfection. I think that's one thing for certain. I've also learned that when you say something, once it comes out of your mouth or once you put it on paper and you send it, you lose control of what it means. It's up to how other people take it. It's like the law of the toothpaste. If you squeeze toothpaste out, it's hard to get it all back in, And I think that's something I've learned more and more. Well, back in the day, well, I didn't mean that. This is what I meant, and that's gospel. Well, I can't say that now. I have to be very thoughtful of who my audience is, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. And sometimes I'll even do things folksy because I know that might be picked up a little bit more than if I'm academic. So I think really for me, my journey to be, to have a better grasp and to be able to be a better, a better superintendent, leader, person in the community is that whole idea of taking the talent and the learning that I've had, letting experience then marinate that, and then really starting to then understand those things and then be purposeful of them. And that's probably put a bow on that one.
I totally agree with what you just said. There was a question earlier on about, well, how do you action step some things? So if I can maybe just add on to what Aaron was saying is, how do you take that concept, that wisdom, and how do you build that? Some of the action steps you can take is you can get exposed to a broader view. You can work on projects. You can maybe ask to be on a committee, get involved in things that you've never worked on before, volunteer for stuff. The way you get that experience is to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And to take some chances and to say, sign me up. I want to do something, and I'll take some responsibility and see how it goes and learn and grow from it. I would also say part of that wisdom comes from failure and understanding why things didn't go successfully, taking the time to understand it, reflect on it, and how might I do something different going forward. That's the other piece that's really important. You have to be able to be self-aware and not have such an ego to say and deflect everything and say, you know what, I had a piece of this. What can I learn from it? How can I grow from it?
And one thing, just to piggyback on Heather about that, how can I grow from it, that failure? Don't, unless you do something really specific to be malicious, you never have to take blame for anything, but you should always take responsibility. Because when you take blame, you get emotionally charged, you feel bad, and you're not going to get yourself out of that, because then you become part of the problem. But if you don't feel that blame, but you feel the responsibility to do something about it, then do it. There are going to be times when you do some dumb things that you shouldn't have done, and you need to be sorry. But for the majority of time, you don't mean to be malicious. So quit taking blame for stuff, but always take responsibility for stuff.
Yeah.
Those are amazing takeaways to that question. I love the idea of reminding yourself what learning what wisdom is, building your base, failure. Those are things that we really don't learn in school. taking responsibility and not taking blame. Like, those are great. And Erin, let me tell you, that toothpaste thing, I've used that with like my clients and the people I work with when I'm teaching programs in the crumpled heart. Cause I'm like, sometimes like they need to see that visual of knowing what it's like when you can't just word vomit.
Another one that you can use is peanut butter on bread, because if maybe some people don't brush teeth, I don't know, but I hope they do. But another great one is that with peanut butter on bread, when you put peanut butter on and you want to take that off, you can get it off, but you're going to damage what was there before. And I think that's another really good, analogy, that when you say things and you put things out there, sometimes you can get them back, and sometimes you can. And let's be honest, everybody, even though somebody says they're sorry and you moved on, it's there somewhere, isn't it? That hurt, that scar, you might not think it, but it's there somewhere. So that just being purposeful at the beginning, because sometimes you wreck stuff and you can't make it better, but that you have to just be able to move on.
So, excuse me. We have about 5 minutes left, and I was kind of going back and forth on asking one more question, and I really like how this one ended. So I think I'm going to end it here with that. But I'm also going to ask if you guys have any kind of closing remark, like, that you want to leave with the people that are watching this, for the people that are going to watch this, like the recording and all that stuff.
Well, I would say that the fact that you're actually watching this and engaged and involved as a young professional is, you're on your journey, you're on your way. And based on what we're covering today, would love to be a resource for folks. So if you want to reach out, and I'm not going to speak for Erin, but I think both of us feel very strongly about working with people and mentoring people. And if you want to bounce stuff off us, or I know I'm open to that. I'm on LinkedIn, so if you want to link in, that's fine. And so I really appreciate being part of this, and very much enjoyed it. And hopefully next year we can be in person so we can see everyone.
A great addition. It's great to have you here, Heather. Thanks and I'm going to get that executive agenda. There's a lot of things that I've learned from you too. So it's very nice to meet you.
Oh, wonderful to meet you.
Yep. I would say,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
920-539-7151. That's my cell phone. My email's out there. You can Google me, LinkedIn, it's there. One thing I'll end with was that quote. So, I was at a funeral, a couple of years ago, and, I kept hearing, and I was born Roman Catholic, but now I kind of roam. I don't know how Catholic I am. I got faith, whatever. But I really got things happen for a reason. I kept hearing that all the time. And I kept thinking, really? This person got killed at a young age for a reason. Oh, this person got cancer for a reason. Oh, there's something here. And I got sick and tired of that. I got so tired of hearing that. And I started thinking that, maybe, and I don't want to say things don't happen for a reason, because after I made this quote, the next day I saw that movie Signs, M. Night Shyamalan, where things happen for a reason. So I think maybe I'm being told something, but maybe things don't happen for a reason, but we get to give reasons to why things happen. And what I mean by that is, when something happens in your life, if you put a reason that it can make you stronger, or this is going to be a good thing in the long run because it'll help you change your life, or this was something that was necessary to end pain and suffering, if you give a reason to what happened that's positive, it will be good. If you give a reason to what happened as negative, you're going to struggle. So I would just, as you go out there through your life journey, not just in careers, but with family, because mortality, we never get off this earth alive. Things are going to happen, but maybe things don't happen for a reason, but we all get to give reasons to why things happen. And I would challenge all of you to give positive, developmental, resilient reasons to why everything in your life happens. And then when good things in your life happens, give yourself a little bit of credit that says, well, maybe I did something to make that good happen. And then keep doing those.
Those are really great, like, ending words, and I very much appreciate it. And yes, so anyone who is listening to this, whether it be live, whether it be the recording, definitely feel free to reach out to Heather and Aaron, or you can reach out to the young professionals and we can also get you their contact information and all that stuff. If you're currently on the chat and you want their contact information, you can send a quick message and one of us will respond with it. So kind of turning a little bit then, I want to just thank everyone for tuning in this morning. It's been a pleasure to be able to hear the questions you guys have to ask. It's been great hearing what Heather and Aaron have to say. There are a lot of great, I have like 3 pages full of notes that I've taken that I could probably easily turn into like quotes on like a Pinterest board or something. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
I'll send a link to that Pinterest board if you would, please.
Will do. And it's just been a great opportunity. And this also does conclude the last day of Breakfast with Champions. So for those who are just tuning in today or tuned in all 3 days, we thank you so much. And don't forget to check out Society Insurance, North Fond du Lac School District, Young Professionals of Fond du Lac, and all of the other organizations that our breakfast or that our champions are a part of that have been on previous days, because they're all great. And I'm excited that y'all are a part of this community. So I thank you, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Take care, everyone.